Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking around to the last panel of this first day of RevEx Fest, the Revenue Excellence Festival. RevEx Fest is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. If you're not a member yet, you're missing out, but you will be invited to join right after the summit. Now, onto our amazing sponsors. This summit wouldn't be possible without our amazing sponsors, who you see on this slide. Big thanks to them for making RevEx Fest happen. To learn more about these innovative companies, click on the Sponsors Booth tab at the top of this event page. And while you're there, you can also check the jam-packed agenda by visiting the Agenda tab at the top of the event page and see the full schedule of events for the next 2 days. And also, if you missed something today, you can write it down and access the recording later. But let's focus on this session right now. So this is the agenda for this session. We are going to do some housekeeping notes very quickly, and then I'm going to pass it to Nipul, and then he will introduce himself. The panelists will introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump into the discussion. We have some time for Q&A, so please make sure to add your questions to the chat, and we will answer them. So as far as housekeeping notes, familiarize yourself with GoCast. There's tons of opportunities for you here to use the chat, make friends, do some networking, connect with people, connect with the speakers, ask a lot of questions, and finally, check out our speakers and sponsors booth at the top of this page. But for right now, I'm going to pass it to Nipul. He's going to be our moderator for today. Unfortunately, Jess is having some technical problems, but she might be able to join later. Let's see. Nipul, I'll pass it to you, and you can start a conversation. I'll see you at the end for some outro.
Awesome. Thanks, Eduardo. Hey, MSP. How's it going? I am super excited to be here. My name is Nipul Choksi. I run marketing here at Atrium. I was pretty fortunate to have worked with some pretty kick-ass marketing teams even before Atrium, companies like Marketo, Yammer, Microsoft, where I had the opportunity to work with a lot of great marketers as well as sales folks. And one of the key things that always came to bear is and is a big determiner of how well or how successful your business is going to be is really around how well sales and marketing work together. So really excited to speak with the folks here today. Before we dive into the content, I want to give the chance for each of the panelists to be able to introduce themselves. So Alina, why don't you kick it off?
I started my career in sales, actually, but I've out of school after I did my master in computer science, I started being a builder in product, and I worked for Bloomberg and for Pearson, for lots of large companies, where I saw an opportunity for me to build product for revenue teams, and that's how we started Chili Piper in 2016. I'm the co-founder and the co-CEO there. And as recent as of last month, I'm the acting CMO at Chili Piper for the next 12 months, which means that the topic of sales and marketing and alignment is very timely for me.
Now you have the really fun job.
Yes.
Awesome. Sam?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Clemens. I wear two hats that might be relevant here for talking about selling to sales and marketing teams. One hat is I'm an operator. About a little over 10 years ago, I led product at HubSpot. We were selling to marketing teams. After that, I co-founded a company called Insight Squared, did sales analytics, and we sold to sales teams. And then recently, 2 years ago, co-founded a company called Reprise. We make a demo platform, and we sell to both sales and marketing teams. The other hat that might be relevant here is I've also been a VC twice, full-time, with Greylock and then Accomplice. And I'm still a part-time VC with Accomplice. And so by being on boards, I work with a lot of sales and marketing leaders as they're talking about many of the issues that we're probably about to dive into right now.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. One of the things that I think is really unique about this particular panel is both of you are co-founders and have that C-level perspective, right? CEO, co-founder perspective. And so I'd love to kind of kick off the discussion and just get your thoughts in terms of how do you want to see sales and marketing work together? I'll kick it off to you, Alina, just to get your thoughts there first.
I've done a lot of roles as an individual contributor within the sales world. So I cold called, I sent out sequences, I sent all sorts of drips on LinkedIn and on other platforms. So I've always had that perspective of reaching the audience at the right time. And to me, marketing was always the pre-sales to that, making sure that the customer is ready to receive that message, that they have been exposed to the brand in the right way. So the alignment as a system, as an organization, only came a little bit later to me as we were building Chili Piper to the scale where it's at now. And I've only maybe a year or so started thinking about all the alignment touch points and all the rules of engagement between the two teams to make sure that they both have the right incentives to work with one another, because it's a team sport. And I've noticed that the systems are not always quite easy to calibrate, to have that right alignment through the funnel stages and also through the different segments that you might be touching, because PLG is very differently than SMB, than medium accounts or enterprise accounts. And to be able to be most effective, you have to think about these touch points holistically and how to ensure that everybody is incentivized, even at the individual contributor level, to contribute to pipeline, to contribute to making lifelong customers. And in some cases, it might take some time to calibrate those touch points and to have a machine that executes effectively at scale. But I see as a co-founder and as a co-CEO, I see the beauty in the machine working effectively for sure.
Yeah, awesome. And I like the fact that, you kind of went straight to the heart of the matter in terms of incentives, right? Behavior is driven by incentives on any sort of go-to-market team. Sam, how have you kind of, like, again, as a co-founder, thought about incentives and making sure that they're aligned across both teams so that everybody's kind of rowing in the same direction?
Yeah, maybe two thoughts here. One is that there should be pressure, but not tension. And there's a distinction. So maybe think a little bit about how a product team works with an engineering team. There is pressure there on, where do we draw the bar? How much are we like throughput versus when is it ready for release? But there's not tension. The teams still trust each other and work together. I think you need the same thing with sales and marketing. There should be pressure, sales wanting, needing more pipeline. But there shouldn't be tension, like a lack of trust, because then you're going to have issues fundamentally. And no matter what else happens, you'll start to see breakdowns and passive aggressive behavior and all sorts of bad stuff. The second thought is I think one of the easiest ways to make sure that you have alignment is just to make everything super transparent. And particularly in our modern day and age where we have so many systems that we can use, making sure that the things that we're able to monitor are at least aligned. And I'm thinking of like really basics here, but you'd be surprised. Like having the same definitions of things. You'd be surprised how many companies will say, okay, here's what marketing has delivered. And marketing has one chart in the board deck. And then in the same board deck, the sales slide about what they've received doesn't have the same numbers. So making sure that you've got transparency and alignment, at least on the observable, measurable stuff, I think is a good bedrock from which to start.
Yeah, it's funny. You make a great point around definitions, especially. At one of my prior companies, we ran a lot of events, and at the end of an event, I talked to a marketer who was putting on the event, and she was just like, "This went great. Look at all the people that showed up." 2 minutes later, I was talking to a sales rep, and the sales rep was like, "Oh, this event sucked. all we were talking to is people who couldn't buy, didn't make a business decision, they were in the wrong industry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just kind of like, I think like that definition of who you're targeting is really, really important. Do you guys have any thoughts as to how you kind of arrive at that in terms of a common definition and how you continually drive to reinforce that across both teams? Alina?
Before I get into the definitions and how we're thinking about them, the trust, transparency is funny. Sam, I have the same core values within the team. I just wanted to emphasize that because I think it's super important. And it's funny how you put it in terms of putting pressure but not tension. Me, I always say it's always good to feel stretched but not stressed. So it feels like as co-founders, we have some similar approaches to these things. The definitions, so it starts with obviously the persona having a lot of clarity on what that persona looks like at different industries and at different sizes, because oftentimes sales goes in one direction, creates their persona documents to train their team. The marketing team creates their buyer journeys separately, and then you have the product teams that might think about the persona in a different way for use cases and needs. So first and foremost, the live persona documents that everybody understands how the persona can be helped through the marketing funnel, through the sales funnel, to the product funnel, because it's a game of help, right? You want to make sure that you want to add most value to your persona at every stage of the funnel. And as you're looking through these lenses of how to help the persona, you have a mission to make sure that success at every stage is in terms of that. Are you able to help that customer or that account or the strategy, depending on how you go about it, at the stages of the funnel? So to give you an example, we have something that we call first engagement at the top of the funnel. So meaning that an account has engaged with us, and that means that they either followed us on social, or they've came to an event for us, or they might have read something interesting on that funnel. But you also want to make sure that these first engagements are not superficial metrics, because just the fact that they came to our website or they followed you on LinkedIn is not a sufficient signal. You want to make sure that they've engaged with your content at that point in a way that makes sense. And obviously, next level from that, you've got the first engagement from that particular account, but do they have all the right signals that they could be a good buyer for you? And we call that a first engagement that's qualified. And so forth. We have other metrics for the funnel, qualified that have requested a meeting, qualified that have requested a meeting and got one, and they've showed. And we constantly tweak all the little conversions that happen in between the funnel to make sure that they're visible to everybody in the sake of transparency, but also to make sure that the definition for each conversion point is easily explainable and understandable by all the teams that are involved.
Okay, that's awesome. So to that end, I mean, you kind of talk about the whole concept of, like, basically it's all about like aligning around a funnel, right? And obviously the funnel is different regarding whether you're selling to enterprise versus SMB. How do you guys generally think about making sure that sales and marketing are working together, and the tactics to ensure that in different segments that you sell to, right? So whether it's enterprise or SMB. So Sam, do you want to have some thought? Do you have some thoughts there?
Yeah, let me maybe tie that with your last question as well. I'm generally anti-persona, but pro-segmentation. So first, anti-persona. I've worked with companies before that have personas where, you know, they're selling to a person named Lucy who likes chocolate and has a dog, and like these are all the almost like an entire personality construct as a fictional person that is their persona. And they have like 12 of them. I think that the risk you run when you do that as a sales or marketing team, that construct, is that it becomes divorced from reality. I think rather than have these personas that you're selling or marketing to, use customers. Say like, actually, no, the person we're selling to with this product or in this segment is the head of sales enablement at Cloudera, or it's the CMO at Pendo. And this was the value prop. This was the pain point. And so you actually have you have a referenceable point of truth because it was a real person, a real pain point. And if there's ever a debate, you can call them. That I think is far stronger, and I think avoids a risk that is very commonly found with personas. Segmentation, on the other hand, I think is fantastic and helps with alignment. So basically figuring out, okay, what are the reasons, the different types of buyers that buy us? Why do they buy us for different reasons? And how do we use, for example, different types of marketing strategies, different value props, different sales scripts, different post-sales conversations along different segments, because different things will resonate with different segments.
Interesting. And so to that end, some of the segments that you might be selling into is enterprise versus SMB, right?
For example, or enterprise, frankly, enterprise mid-market and SMB. You know, three pretty distinct. I think everyone will immediately say, okay, but what's enterprise? What's mid-market? That will be a debate that would last far longer than this panel. But at least whatever SMB, mid-market, and enterprise means for your category or your company, they're likely pretty distinct. They probably have different buying patterns, different value props, and you would use different sales and marketing motions if you were building a company that targeted each of them.
I'm obsessed with segmentation as well, Sam, and I completely agree that the Lucy who eats chocolate is completely useless because you can't make decisions based on it. You only make decisions based on how your persona resonates, and different messages that resonate at different stages depend a lot on the context, whether they're selling themselves to SMBs, whether themselves are have certain responsibilities or not. So the segmentation is crucial.
Let me actually maybe I'll go one notch maybe more disruptive. I don't actually think the interesting tension is really sales versus marketing anymore. I think maybe it was in the early 2000s. I think today the interesting alignment question is marketing, sales, post-sales, and product. And you need to have alignment among each of those four pieces if you really want to succeed in building a go-to-market motion in today's market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like the importance of sales and marketing along with this post-sales and product is absolutely critical as well, which is not to say that there isn't necessarily kind of, as you say, pressure, right? There is pressure to make sure that you're hitting that common number between sales and marketing. I've definitely seen a lot of sales and marketing leaders struggle with ensuring that pressure doesn't turn into tension, right? So to that end, I mean, Alina, the companies that you've co-founded, how have you thought about kind of the revenue side of the house, marketing and sales, working with the post-sales and the product team, and kind of making sure that alignment is properly constructed?
Fortunately, I've only co-founded one company. Not to jinx it. The customer marketing portion of things is especially crucial through this economical weird events that are happening, and a lot of people are doubling down obviously on customer marketing and how they approach that through the lenses of product, provided that everybody can do that. There's a lot about customer marketing that needs to happen that involves all teams, all bound, because you want to make sure that you're enabling your advocates, that you think about the right expansion motions, the right preventing of churn, and also leverage the SDRs in the outreach that you might have that might involve your best customers. And if you have a customer advisory board, how can you enable the CAP members to be effective in your marketing campaigns cross-channel? Unfortunately, they're not good tools in tech for that, and I see like an opportunity there that can enable someone to do this effectively at scale. We do a lot of it through our events and all the motions that we do, but I sense a need to do this a lot more effectively at scale. If you have just a few enterprise accounts, you can do a lot more. But if you're like us and you cover multiple segments, then it becomes increasingly difficult to make the most out of it at scale.
Interesting. And so, I'll grant you that, the kind of how sales and marketing should be working together and how you should be approaching them, right, as tech providers, changes depending on whether it's an enterprise versus SMB sales motion for the tech providers. How does that change for a PLG motion? Sam, I know Reprise is kind of, you guys are big in that space in terms of promoting the whole PLG notion. How have you guys kind of thought about that?
Yeah, it's been interesting as an alignment question because sales and marketing alignment, I think, was an issue in the early 2000s. And then alignment with post-sales became exceedingly more important in a SaaS world. I think the last 5+ years, there's been now a new movement, which is really around product-led growth. It's coming from the fact that buyers want to buy differently, right? They expect to experience more of the product up front. And this probably comes from mobile devices and consumers being able to basically experience software themselves directly, for the first time. So buyers want to buy differently. And the question is, sellers of software, how do they accommodate that? And so in the marketing world, that is manifesting as #PLG. And so it's actually at the point where now CMOs, if you show up in a board meeting and you don't have a PLG strategy, you had better be concerned for your job. And that, by the way, is not just at the transactional end of the ACV spectrum. SMB, where it might be a freemium purchase process. The PLG question is being presented to CMOs all the way up the segment stack, from SMB all the way up to enterprise. It's also happening on the sales side. So it might not be called PLG. PLG seems to be more of a marketing term. But in sales, the fact that buyers want to buy differently means sellers need to respect that, and sellers need to figure out how to engage and sell differently using product and not just traditional sales motions. So it's happening on both sides, where product needs to manifest itself much more in both the marketing and the sales motions.
Awesome. And so, Alina, how have you kind of approached this whole question around whether it's internally at Chili Piper as well as with clients or prospects that you guys work with in terms of driving that sales and marketing alignment in a PLG context? So
I'll talk about it PLG from our customer perspective and then PLG from Chili Piper's perspective. Our product actually, if you look at our website, is not very obvious that we help with PLG because we talk a lot about the inbound conversions and how the form conversion doubles the inbound pipeline. But a lot of our customers, especially in the enterprise segment, use us for in-app upsells. So they have all sorts of campaigns that drive engagement through their current customers, and they want to upsell or they want to reactivate or whatever the action that they might have within the app. And they use us to be able to route that activation to the right customer success rep or the right sales PLG expert or even support team or account manager for that matter. So we've been helping a lot our current customers with this kind of upsells campaigns, and I've seen a lot of what's working and what's not working. I've rarely seen companies that are successful at both ends. Maybe HubSpot is like one outlier that I've seen that does PLG and top-down sales really well. I've not seen any other companies being successful at both. Right now, for sure, when Chili Piper sells, it sells to the manager, and then the manager gets their reps to use Chili Piper. We don't have a PLG motion per se. And I think it's a lost opportunity for us, and obviously we're going to fix that. But I'm constantly mindful of the of how both can be done perfectly at scale and how you can maintain that pulse between what the manager wants and what the manager needs versus what the individual person that might come to you to get that traction. And then, of course, there's a PLG that comes from a manager as well. Can the manager self-serve in this case? And when your product is as complex as ours, you can serve maybe some use cases for the simplistic segment of the market, but there's still some white glove service that needs to happen throughout the process that you don't want to deprive people out of to serve them best. So it's a topic that I'm currently adjusting.
Okay, yeah, I mean it's interesting because like PLG, it's almost like when the whole PLG notion got started, it was people saying, oh well, I'm just going to build a product and I'm going to make it so that I don't need a sales team to actually sell this. And in B2B, just kind of pulling on a thread that you just brought up, Lena, it's like you're selling to a lot of different types of customers. There might be some customers where it actually makes sense for a human being to actually supplement that PLG motion as well, right? And so I think that's a big driver of that complexity here as well. Sam, did you have any thoughts there?
I think we're defining it too narrowly if we call it that PLG motion, where it's kind of like and that PLG motion is a freemium motion. I think when PLG first started, people said, oh, PLG is freemium. And therefore it's not applicable to, let's say, an enterprise product for 100K ACV. There's no way that someone's going to go do freemium and then credit card pay for 100K ACV product. And so there were a lot of enterprise companies that said, hey, we're going to just keep doing things the same way as normal. The only way you get to experience the product before you buy it is screenshots of the product pasted into PowerPoint. And I think they're fundamentally missing the point on why and what PLG was and why it was happening. PLG was happening because buyers wanted to experience the product more as part of the process. And just because enterprise companies aren't doing a freemium purchase process doesn't mean they can't expose product as part of the purchase process. So, two examples would be, two of our customers are Pendo and Zendesk. 6 months ago or a year ago, the primary call to action on their homepage was basically talk to a sales rep, fill out a lead form. And if you look now, the primary calls to action on their page are to basically experience directly a product tour, to basically get into the product right then without having to talk to a sales rep. And you can do that with any piece of enterprise software. So putting this all together, I think what enterprises are now realizing is that the meaning of PLG is broader. It simply means exposing product to your potential buyer way earlier in the process. And even enterprises that don't have freemium transactional models can do that.
I'm curious, Sam, do you see fear from companies that are larger that might scare some of their customers because their product might not be as easy to understand on if they would have to go through a self-serve motion? Is that like the biggest fear that you're getting from them?
I think that's the difference between a trial and a product tour. Most enterprise software is super complex. So we have another customer who's Cloudera, does data pipelining. In order to really use their software, you need to upload petabytes of data. If you're doing a free trial, that's not really going to be a great successful strategy, because what prospect in a trial wants to upload petabytes of data? On the other hand, if you can give a prospect an experience that already has the data uploaded, is already showing what it would look like if the data were there and had already been processed, you can basically show them the results and the benefits without making them go through the work of a free trial. So I think that particularly in enterprise where you have complex software, I think it's an area where free trial may not be an appropriate motion, but product tour is a very successful motion. And both of them they're just individual tactics. Both of them are still aligned around how do you expose the product earlier in the process to your prospect.
Yeah, and just bringing it back to our core topic here, right? Like whether you expose it as a product tour, whether you expose it as a trial, is all a function of, again, from your go-to-market standpoint. And this is where, again, sales and marketing have to be on the same page. What is it that makes most sense, right? Because if marketing's out there sending promo emails, promoting a trial, and the best go-to-market motion for you as a company is to actually do a freemium version, right, where you're showing them their own data and all that, like sales is not necessarily set up for success, right? So it's really important that, again, goes back to your initial point, Sam, of let's get aligned on on our definitions. And one of those definitions being, in a PLG world, are you doing trials versus are you doing freemium versus are you doing, like a free version of an account that, has limited functionality that's going to expire at a certain time, but it will show you your own data and so on.
Or are you doing a traditional inside sales motion?
Exactly.
Maybe even with a BDR team.
Exactly.
And maybe even with a marketing team that's running, pipeline gen or more ABM motions. But
exactly.
You've used product, you have alignment with product, you've used product in ways that the buyer wants in each of those areas.
Exactly. So I know we have a couple of minutes left, and there are a couple of here's a great kind of audience question that I just want to make sure we tackle here. So Anna asks, how do you guys think about the sales development function when it comes to kind of the revenue team and bridging the gap between sales and marketing? Alina, do you want to kick it off here?
When we started, we thought it's only fitting for the SDRs to fit under marketing, because we thought it's a lot about messaging within the right segments, and marketing would be best equipped to manage it. Then we quickly realized that there's a lot more to the SDR motion, where you need to provide the right coaching and the right motivation to maintain that high performance within the sales team, and that is much better equipped to be done by a sales leader. Obviously, there's a lot of cross work that needs to be done to make sure that the right accounts are targeted and that the right messaging goes out and that the right nurture happens to those accounts before the SDRs can go and provide real value through a personalized approach. But the coaching and the motivation, we've found it better under sales.
How have you thought about that, Sam?
Maybe I'll give the theory side and then maybe the practical side and maybe what actually matters. I think in theory, what seems to make the most sense is to actually have a split on the BDR function, where you have an inbound BDR team that's handling a pipeline that the marketing team has generated. And they're essentially doing a qualification function. And then you have an outbound BDR team, which is essentially doing pipeline generation in a motion that looks probably very similar to what an enterprise AE might do when they're prospecting into a named account list. And because those motions are so different, one qualification and one really like outbound cold calling, I think it often makes sense to separate them, because otherwise what will happen is if you have one team, your whole BDR team will find it much more easy to just call the leads as opposed to do the cold calls. So I think in theory, you separate them. I think in practice, and could have one be a marketing function and one be a sales function. I think in practice, often one of the tough challenges with BDR teams is just how to scale them. It's a lot of humans and training and enablement. And working with humans is often a better sales function than a marketing type of responsibility. So I think in practice, you often see it in sales. And then I guess just the third part of this is it shouldn't really matter. Fundamentally, whether it's reporting up into sales, the head of sales or the head of marketing, the first thing they're going to do, the very first thing, is hire a BDR manager to basically abstract that problem away and get themselves out of the weeds. And so whichever team the BDR manager is reporting into, they are always going to be sitting between the two, and will have to be aligned and transparent and everything else.
And in an ideal world, the marketers would be able to augment the customer data in a way that the qualification is done automatically and identify that one thing that you can ask them to see whether you turn them to a qualified held meeting or you disqualify them and you nurture them for later. We've noticed that most companies can do that if they put some data augmentation in the form, if they have some more clarity onto the questions that the inbound SDRs are asking to be able to get the interested buyer into somebody who can answer their questions faster. Because if you get somebody to have the expectation that they get a demo, you say get a demo, and then you go through many, many loops, the likelihood of your buyer getting frustrated is very high, and you just want to get as fast as possible to an answer. So in our case, I would say 99.99% of our customers are don't have an inbound team. They serve that to they repurpose it and they serve it for outbound.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, kind of the automate. I mean, we use Chili Piper, and that's definitely helped us from an inbound standpoint. And yeah, the bulk of the work on the sales development side is definitely on the outbound side. Awesome. So I know we're running up on time here. I did want to give you guys the chance to just kind of highlight for the audience, what's your one big takeaway on the topic? If there's one thing you want the audience to remember when it comes to sales and marketing alignment, what would that be? And Sam, I'll hand it off to you to kind of kick it off.
That it's not actually sales and marketing alignment. It's marketing, sales, post-sales, and product alignment.
And
Awesome.
to me, sorry, Sam, I interrupted you. Wanted to add some more?
No, please, go ahead.
To me, the biggest work that we need to do together as teams is towards optimizing the buyer journey to allow our prospects and our customers to have a VIP treatment across the board. And it's our roles together to provide that best-in-class user experience throughout the cycle and make sure that at every touch point we provide value.
Awesome. Well, I really want to thank you guys for coming on here and dropping some great knowledge. I know I've been taking notes for our own teams here in terms of some of the advice that you guys have been giving. And with that, I'll turn it over to Eduardo.
Hey, Sam and Alina, thank you very much. That was really a great panel. The key takeaways are fantastic. Audience, thank you for sticking around. We have a panel coming up tomorrow morning. This is the last panel of the day. What a great way to close the day, right? But join us tomorrow for well-oiled machines running RevOps at pre-public scale. And that's a wrap for today. The panelists and I will hang out backstage a little bit, and I will see you tomorrow for the second day of RevEx Fest. Awesome, thank you.
It was fun. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, we can go back on stage if we need. We're good?
Yeah.